roll call show that all of the members are here except Mrs. DePretis.
I'm here, John. I'm on the
You're on
phone.
the phone. Okay.
Yep.
So then we are all here, plus take note of. Is that on the phone or no?
Sí, that's
Okay. Sue, you writing down who else is here?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you all for attending this. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Give a second out there. Thank you. All those in favor?
Yeah. Aye.
Okay. We have at least 2 votes. And public participation. Oh, approval of the minutes. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes as transmitted electronically.
So moved.
Second? Second?
I think she's, can you tell Kathy?
Kathy, she's trying.
I'll second.
Oh, okay.
Is that what Kathy's trying to do?
Yeah.
I know,
I'm
but I-
the alternate, so I don't, can I second as the alternate?
Sorry, Sue seconded.
Sue did it. Oh, Sue
Okay.
did
It's
it.
okay. We got our second finally. Sue was
Even
here.
third.
And we got a third, too. Anything to say about the minutes? And I'm looking for a motion, or I'm looking for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
We have approved the minutes.
Aye.
of the January meeting. Thank you. And now we move on to public participation. Is there anyone from the public out there?
Mr. McSpirit.
Any public want to speak? I'll read the spiel, otherwise I won't. Okay, nobody wants to speak. Discussion and next steps, system-wide focus areas. Superintendent Lebonsky, that's you, I believe, usually.
Yeah, usually it is me. So our focus areas this year are attendance, student engagement, and targeting student needs. And in the time of COVID, certainly it is taking on a new meaning. As we discussed at the last meeting, we were talking about learning gaps. And, as we go through really thinking about learning gaps, it is all about what our students need on an individual level, making sure that our students are engaged, whether it's a digital technology issue, or it's just making sure that they're engaged, even when, our secondary kids are still having to do hybrid. So that difficulty sometimes being a remote or distant learner. And even for our in-person students, while teachers are trying to teach students who are remote when we're in quarantine. So that whole difficulty there. Attendance has been essentially redefined by the state, which what they are saying is that it's work completion, it's not necessarily seat time. So a different focus there. So we've had to really respond in a variety of different ways. And as recently as yesterday afternoon, we were on a call with the state. And as you may have seen in the paper, we are getting 2.9 million, which can be used over the next 2 years to address these learning gaps. So certainly we want to make sure that we provide interventions after school, possibly Saturdays. We talked with Allie about doing educational videos. Some of our teachers were interested in doing that, which our students can watch at various times, even when they're not in school. And sometimes it might be their Saturday morning TV show. Let's hope, if it's engaging enough. And we're also already working with some of our community partners who are always wonderful to us, but so appreciate Ed Advance, who is willing to be creative with us, Kids Play, who we've worked with for a number of different years. And they are willing to really help us kick it up a notch in terms of making sure that the learning is still happening, even when we're not at school. So we're developing that. You'll certainly hear about it more when we get to budget, but we will also bring it to 6 so that we have an understanding of the instructional issues that we're dealing with, the criteria for those programs, those interventions, as well as what Maureen had mentioned at one of our recent SIC meetings in terms of just making sure that we are really building up the instruction in that tier 1 level within the classroom so that our teachers are really good about knowing what our students' needs are, and certainly they want to address them. It's challenging when they're trying to do all these other things, but they do continue to meet in small groups and employ some different strategies so that our students' needs are met. So they're valiant effort at this juncture. As Sue said, when we were offline, we're about 100 days in and working really, really hard to address these issues. So it will help to have those funds, most certainly, and we want to use them wisely. So you'll hear more about that as we
Will they be
progress.
restricted, do you think, or no?
They are really talking about, when we were on the phone the other day, they were talking about certain things. So they were talking about making sure that it is for interventions, making sure that it does address all of our students' needs, including our special ed, our ELL, just everyone, every single student, and even if they're struggling in, and I know this sounds like an oxymoron, maybe even in an honors class, because our students are having, as you've said before, mental health issues and trying to adjust and deal with this crisis, just like we are as adults. And the uncertainty is really hard to deal with on for such a long period of time. We're coming on a year now, and that's tough. You know yourselves. I don't have to repeat that or reiterate that. They also said technology. There's a variety of different areas, but really, really making sure that we're having consistency in terms of instruction. Everybody's getting the same experience. There's a big push for that whole commonality, equity. That was a lot of the hour-long discussion that they had yesterday. Charlene Russell Tucker was the one who did most of the presentation. Desi Nesmith, as you know, formerly from the Alliance world, now another deputy commissioner. And really both of them very strong leaders in advocating for students. So I think they will be sharing more information as we go along. But yes, we have to actually apply for it in answer to your question. And they do have to approve our application. I don't think they will make the bar, a lot of hoops. I think they're trying to make it as simple as possible, but they do have the right of refusal or to deny and kick it back. So they are going to be looking for specific things.
And a related question, you were talking about the State Department and dealing with them. Now that our commissioner is down in Washington interviewing for a new job,
Sure.
what's this control situation look like there, the leadership situation look like?
So Charlene Russell Tucker and Desi Nesmith have really taken on a lot of those positions and responsibilities. They've done a great job. Charlene Russell Tucker really has been on our DPH calls and a lot of that COVID related. Desi Nesmith is more in the instructional realm, but they work very, very well together. I believe that we will have an interim very soon, and it will be probably one of them, would be my guess. And then with an eye toward getting someone in that permanent position, which may end up being one of them.
Okay.
So, which would bode well for, I think, all of us and for Connecticut.
Other questions for Sue about these topics?
Well, I just have a question about the grading situation at the high school, but
Okay, that'll come up
that's what I was
later,
gonna
I
ask
think,
you, yeah.
because we have a couple of agenda items, and then we'll be able to come back to that.
I wasn't sure.
that.
Yeah, we have it later on the agenda.
I saw that.
So we'll circle back.
Circle back to that. Okay, designated school improvement board goals. Now, we had a couple of these assigned to us the last time when we divvied these out. First of which is monitoring implementation, district strategic plan, integration, city strategic plan, blah, blah, blah. I'm guessing there's nothing going on there unless someone wants to say something about that. Okay. Monitor and support middle school, high school building committee, allocate resources, development implementation pathways to the secondary curriculum. That would probably be closest to us for new courses. We have nothing right now. Right?
Not right now, no.
No, but we are in mind of that, and oversee and support whatever is necessary to deal with the educational impact, the effects of prolonged, it's awkward, I made a mistake in wording that, impact of the prolonged distance learning. And that we will be coming to that in a couple of agenda items, unless someone wants to say something about any of those three. Anyone out there in Cyberland? Ronnie, I've been ignoring you so far. You want to add anything to this, or will you wait for later? Okay, thank you. The next item, liaison roles and expectations. I should have put on the agenda for a meeting ago, and that was my fault that we didn't have that on there. But it's on there now, and I think, Fiona, you want that one, right?
Yeah, sorry. So I was hoping that we could just kind of define what those liaisons should be doing to make sure that all of the schools are getting equal representation in reporting and, you know, kind of setting the guidelines of what the Board of Ed liaison can do, what they can't do, and what's expected of the positions. Because I don't think we've ever really, you know, kind of put it down in a more formal setting as far as what exactly they should be doing.
And what do you anticipate doing in this meeting about that?
Well, I was hoping just to get input from the board members as far as what they feel those positions should be doing, what their expectations would be.
And we have several administrators here too, who could be a big help in figuring out what they would like to get out of liaison people, right?
Right. So just from my perspective, I mean, what I would like to see is just that each liaison, you know, reaches out on a monthly basis to the administration at the school, because I look at the role of the liaison as a way to kind of get the word out there about all of the good things that are happening in the buildings, you know, what's going on, events, things that they're working on that the public may not be aware of. And then the liaison brings that information back to the full board for discussion at the board meeting. So that's just my opinion on what it should be, but I was interested to see what everyone else's was.
This is Sue. Just to your point, Fiona, I would be more interested in knowing what we can't do. Just because, just from my own perspective, I've been meeting with Marianne regularly. So I just want to make sure that as a board member, I'm not offering to do something that I shouldn't do, even like volunteering or helping, something along those lines. So if we could outline what our responsibilities are, I think that would be very helpful.
Sorry. I don't know what happened here.
That's all.
Okay, now Fiona, traditionally, what the liaison people do is make reports at the board meetings. The wording you used before makes it sound like you're looking for something more interactive than we've had.
No, I think the report is fine. I think sometimes, you know, we're not aware of things that are going on in the schools. And I think the reports give us a good way to find that out, you know, exactly what's going on at the schools. I think the only cautionary item is, you know, the liaison should never get involved in staffing issues or, you know, parental issues with the administration or teachers at a certain building, because there's avenues that should be, those types of grievances, we'll call it, should be addressed, and the forum would not be through the liaison. I think the liaison should more be a positive role and a positive bridge between the schools and the Board of Ed. But again, that's just my opinion.
Okay.
We've just never really
That's
discussed it.
That's probably a good reason to have something formalized, even if it's just some bullet points, nothing too drastic, but I think it should be captured and recorded. So I don't know, John, to your point, did you not think it was sick material? Should it be as part of another committee?
I'm not sure I understand that point.
What point?
No, but what you were saying,
Whether-
what's your question?
Should it be part of the school improvement committee? Should we talk about it here? Or should we be talking about it somewhere else?
Well, no, this discussion belongs in this committee. Are you asking if the reports belong in this committee or are appropriate to the whole board, or is that not what you're?
No,
asking?
I'm asking if it's something that we should be, because it's school improvement, right?
Except
So
that
is
the
that
liaison
something-
people are the whole board, and that would require them to show up at SIC meetings. Right?
Or we can just take Fiona's recommendations and put some guidelines around the school liaison roles.
Yeah,
and
that's what we're
roll it
doing.
out to the board.
That's what we're doing.
Okay, then I missed that part. I didn't hear that we were gonna do that.
Yeah, no, that's why we're talking about it, because there isn't a lot of formal structure to the liaison assignment, and people have pretty much handled it by finding out what's going on at the individual schools and then reporting back. There are also liaison assignments to the state legislature and to Ed Advance. And where else? There was liaison assignment to the.
The
And
curriculum
those
committee.
things-
Was
like,
there?
that
Yeah,
should
I
all
know
be-
we've had something besides just school,
Technically, I'm the THS school governance.
school
Yeah,
governance.
But there's
Okay,
also
so,
the Ford School has a, governance.
School governance. Yeah.
so we're supposed to be reporting back on what's happening in those areas. And the question is, well, Fiona, when it happens, is it happening well enough? Are the good things, the good examples we've had of these reports, what you're looking for everyone to do?
Well, I think it's open for discussion. I mean, another thing that I think would be helpful is if the liaison, when the principal presents their budgets to their school community, if that board member could be there so you can kind of hear the input. So I think I'm just looking more to memorialize like what the expectations are. And I've been guilty of it in the past when I was a liaison also, where sometimes you forget to reach out, and that's really not fair to the school. So I think making it more concrete as to what the expectations are.
Okay, Jess?
I mean, I think the report should be the bare minimum that they do. And I do agree that, I completely agree about being careful about like staffing issues and getting into things like that, like nitty gritty, that's not ours. But I think that it would be really powerful for the liaison to be able to visit the school during the school day and see the school in session and maybe walk through the lunchroom or just see various things that go on during the school day, because you can't get that from an email of a principal sending you notes, And so that, I mean, like early when I first got on the board, I was a liaison to Vogel. And I did. I went there a couple times. I went there for an assembly they had, and people seemed to really appreciate that. And it gave me a much better perspective of what the school was actually like, and in a positive way too. So I mean, I would be all for that. I really like the idea, what you said, Fiona, about being there when they present the budgets, things like that, just to be able to better understand the school's needs. So I know it's a little hard right now with COVID to be able to go into the buildings during the school. Maybe that may not be an option, but I think the reports are like, that's the very least we should be doing personally. I know it's hard too, depending on the board member's work schedule and things like that. But if there's things at night, you could attend something at night at once every few months or something like that.
Ellen?
And also report on what's coming up, what's going to happen, because then someone might want to join or participate, I think that's a good thing also.
That has been very useful in the past, what's going
Yeah.
on that board members might want to
Right,
get involved
right.
in. I'm going to make myself a friend here and give poor Mrs. Hona, who is reduced to selling cookies because her committee is moribund at this point. is this perhaps something that, because our bylaws and our other policies cover what board members should do to fulfill their jobs, is this maybe something that policy, I'm serious, actually,
Yeah, that's actually. a good
that the
idea.
policy committee should drop something simple, something short,
Oh, I agree.
I was
Just to
thinking the
defend-
same
I'm
thing.
not
sound
even
good?
ready.
That actually is a good idea.
Yeah.
okay? Discussion around that possibility.
No, I definitely think we need something concrete because I feel what Sue was saying too about what can't we do, you know? And I think we need to know that. And anything that we put down as concrete is gonna, would make sense to be either part of our roles and responsibilities or our policy.
Sound okay, Fiona? Okay, other people? I think building administrators could be very helpful to the policy committee if they were to inform Mrs. Hona about what would constitute a good report from the point of view of a building. You know, what do you want the board to know and the public who are watching or reading about it later on to know about what's going on in the building too. So if you could do that, that might be helpful. Any final thoughts on this before we move on?
It's
One?
Robin out here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, to Jess's point, we would welcome visitors and any board member, not just the liaison, to come and see all the great things that are happening in the school and you know, what the kids and the staff are doing. So we'd love to see that happen.
Yeah, and I will second for any board member who hasn't gone on a visit to a school as part of a liaison or some other responsibility. It's great to get into the schools. The schools are happy to have us. Teachers are happy to have us. Kids wonder who we are, and then sometimes we get introduced, and that's good too. And you even get invited to sit in on classes, and all of that is good. All of that is very helpful to the overall operation of both the board and the schools, to my point, at least in my opinion. Thank you, Robin. Anything else? Kathy? Kathy Toder, you have your hand
Is
up.
that something we're able to do? Is that something we're able to do now? Or because of COVID, are we not able to?
No, you're gonna die. If you're gonna do a
Yeah.
school, you're gonna die, or you're gonna kill kids.
Not
That's what I
now.
thought.
Yeah,
Right.
we want to be respectful because the parents aren't really allowed in the building right
Right.
now. So I think
Right.
that if the
Good point.
community can't get in, we should not be either until that restriction is lifted.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. And that I have not been to Forbes as of yet, but it's something I plan to do once we can.
That day will come.
Ugh,
Anyone else?
hope-
Anyone else? Going once? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda. Grades in the time of COVID. Now we go back to the goal that we're supposed to be monitoring here, overseeing support necessary to deal with educational impact COVID. So this is part of that. This goes along with monitoring that goal. What is happening? The Board of Ed has policies about grading, and the question becomes, how do we grade under these COVID situations within the framework of the policies that the board has put forward? And that's, I think we're going to hear a couple reports on that. Okay, thank you.
So grades in the time of COVID. I think every district in the nation, in the world, is grappling with this right now. But I think COVID's given us a really great opportunity to look at our practices, to reflect on what we do, and to possibly even develop new strategies so that we can really help our students, and in particular, to help our students learn during this time. I was talking a little bit earlier about what we intend to do with learning gaps and trying to address that. And because the bottom line is we have to get our students to learn. So regardless of whatever grade they get, to me, as a teacher, what's most important to me is, did my students learn? Do they have that foundation? Do they have that core? Can they think critically? Can they move forward in their lives? Have they mastered that concept? Do they know how to converse, communicate, debate, apply the information that I have taught them? So that's the number one. given that, we've really been discussing this or looking at this since that March to June crazy. And I know that at the secondary level, both Robin and Brian have been working with their staffs really since the beginning of this year. And with that, I will turn it over to Mrs. Ferguson, and she can talk a little bit about the process thus far and how we intend to move forward.
Sure. So as Sue just said, it really became a point of frustration, I think everybody's aware of in the spring. The state took a position on the whole pass-fail thing. When we came back to school in the fall, teachers began to express frustration and concern, brought that to the administrators. We got some phone calls from parents. This is predominantly at the secondary level. Because of COVID and because COVID has forced us to be extremely collaborative, which is a good thing, but teaching by definition or by design, traditionally, it hasn't always been collaborative. It's been, I go in my room and I close the door and I do my thing. This has turned that upside down. And our teachers have collaborated so that we could make sure that we were providing common experiences for our kids as much as possible. Throughout having those conversations, what was revealed in many cases is that there was a lack of consistency in some of our grading practices. I might be a 9th grade English teacher and have a very, very traditional approach. Sue might be teaching next door to me, be a little more flexible in her approach. The number of just very basic things like the number of grades that were being used to calculate a final grade per term varied drastically from, teacher to teacher. So these all things came to light. I know that at the high school, Robin started the conversation with her staff back in September. It was brought through the department heads. She was gathering input. They were having these conversations at staff meetings, department chair meetings. Brian Scott was doing the same thing at the middle school. So it's been an ongoing conversation. We formed the Grading Expectations Committee probably, 6-8 weeks ago. In response to this, decided that we wanted to do something a little bit more formal to gather more information, bring it back to the whole faculty, 6 to 12, gathering input. We're actually having this be part of the work that the teachers are going to engage in on February 16th during professional development. So, certainly no decisions have been made. The committee has not arrived at any conclusions. What we've done with the committee is they've formed 2 subcommittees. One group has gone out to look and interview teachers about what they perceive to be barriers to student success right now. And the other group is researching what other districts in the state are experiencing. And then we come back together to have a conversation. And that's where we're at. We're also finding, if I could just add this piece, our social workers and our counselors are also working very hard right now. Our social workers at the high school have done 160 plus home visits so far since school started. And really we're learning that our kids are experiencing such hardship. Many of our students are experiencing hardship, which is interfering with their ability to be successful. So we're trying to be compassionate and understanding of that and look at what we can do to help them meet with success during this really challenging time.
Right, and that's all of our students. It's, AP on down to our CP level.
Yep.
It's been tough, not surprising. I'm sure you know of people in your own lives who are struggling with this. Just dealing with it? Are there, you have your up and down days yourself? It's been a long haul. And yet we, have to remember that our high school, middle schoolers have been on the planet for what, 11 to 18 years? Not a long time. Not a lot of coping skills. We're trying to teach them.
Okay, let's start discussing this. Gary, you're first.
So, and I agree with what you said. And I actually got a little excited at the last meeting.
Not you, Gary.
I apologize for the last meeting, but I did receive a phone call. Now I'll get to my question from somebody outside the system about what they were doing in their school system. It was a teacher, a good friend of mine, who's been there for 37 years, and they said the superintendent called us in, and all 20 math teachers have to pass everybody. You can't flunk anybody. And we said, no, we'll do whatever we want to do. Those are my grades. We're not changing them, all 20. So we're not changing our grades. Their fear was retribution, but this one particular friend of mine has 37 years there. He's not worried about it. And in the end result, they kind of figured it out, and they stuck to their guns. Coincidentally, I found out about the other issue with the grading committee the next day, just purely coincidence. And Steve was more on my mind. Steve was more on my mind for New Britain than anybody else. So I went back and I looked at our documents and what my job or our job as a Board of Education member is. Aside from all the things you're bringing up, which need resources and money for the outside help, the intervention, but I don't believe that lowering standards in any way or allowing things to allow for lower grade acceptance will do anything for the child. I think that we should spend our money, personally, I'm not an educator, on the assistants to get their grades to a level necessary and not necessarily ignoring attendance and and anecdotally, and teachers call, people complain. So I went through the everything we have from the Board of Education manual to the policy manual to the teachers handbook, and we say the same thing through engaging instruction, relevant, rigorous, and personalized attendance to the students' needs. We provide them with the skills necessary to be productive 21st century students, so they can critically and creatively solve problems and construct arguments based on evidence. And my interpretation of lowering the grading standard and lowering the homework requirements and everything else that goes along with COVID, well, that's maybe a result of COVID, doesn't get us to where we need to be. Personally, that's my opinion. But further thinking it through, rather than me creating, the problems I typically create, I have one question I think that will help me understand, and maybe teachers. And I know teachers are working rank and file, they're doing everything they can to keep up.
Yeah,
There's no
really
doubt about
hard.
it. I have 8 family members that are teachers, not necessarily in the school system. A couple of them are. Not the same last name. So you'll never know if they're related, but they're working. But how do we, here's the question. I actually wrote the question down for the first time. How do we expect to hold the teachers responsible for grades? And I'm told it's their responsibility. The grade is their final decision. How do we hold them responsible for the grade, pass or fail, especially fail, if administrators, no matter what level, are asking teachers implicitly or explicitly to ignore what we provide as our guidelines, our architecture, our process, our standards for grading, attendance, homework, etc. If we lower the standards and don't allow the teachers to make their own grading decisions, who do we hold responsible for that student that does fail? If the teacher chooses, if the result is they never attended class, they didn't have their homework in, and their test scores are just abysmal, and yet we're pushing the student through, is the teacher held responsible for that failure, or is it going to be outside the teacher's realm? Because many teachers say it's their responsibility. That final grade is their choice, their responsibility. Yet if they can't hold them to a standard, such as passing 1 or 2 tests or logging on every day, then how can they be blamed if the child fails because he just didn't show up and there was no repercussions during that process? So, how do we distinguish between what's the teacher's fault and what's the fault of the path we choose to go down if we lower the standards for homework being turned in, attendance, or grading? So something you can think about and mull over, but I don't know how you can expect a teacher to accept any lowering of a standard other than his choice to grade based upon whether or not he's providing the student and getting from the student what's expected for a student to be able to graduate and move on and be successful. And it's up to the teacher to make that determination. I always thought. So, like Steve has said to me and other teachers, it's our responsibility, that final grade. Nobody should be telling us what that grade should be. So if that's the case, I don't think we have the right, or is it in one of our policies, to allow anything other than the teacher to make that final decision on the grade. Great, without implicit, pressure or you read that email that went out, it wasn't necessarily a request. It was more of a, this is what you got to do.
Right, and
So,
with respect to that,
Let's let them.
Yeah, I know, I'm done now.
and you're right, that everything that you said, I would really like to think about. But with respect to that email, I accept
I
full
know,
responsibility for that.
I was referencing that, that's all.
I know, but I think it needs to be said here
Yes,
that
please.
that message was sent out premature. It's been rectified.
I know.
It was rectified within 24 hours. There's a variety of reasons. It was a miscommunication between my office and the administration. We've got a lot of balls in the air. I'm not trying to make excuses, but the grading committee is doing their work and they're not finished. And again, honestly, I can draw a correlation to Fiona's request, with the liaison roles. The grading committee was formed for a similar reason, because there were some concerns expressed. Again, it was an equity concern. It was a consistency. I know that nobody wants to reduce academic rigor or lower standards. That's certainly not the intent. It may seem that way, but it's
No.
not the intent, really.
But how do you take it out of the teacher's lap, is I guess,
And
I think they bear the ultimate responsibility is my question and my comment.
but that's not the intent either. And unfortunately, there was a miscommunication, which I will own.
Right, so nobody disagrees with you. Teachers own the ultimate responsibility. However, the conversation, and that's what Sue's saying is still happening. It's ongoing.
Okay.
These are messy issues. We've never experienced this before. That's why we really felt a need for the grading committee. We're in the process. Every secondary teacher will have input during that PD time that we have in February. We'll keep going on. We're going to keep talking about this. It's tough.
I think the other thing that, to your point, Gary, that needs to be considered, and I know you know this, so I'm probably overstating the obvious, but it's through conversations with our teachers and with our faculty and social workers and people who are all working so hard on this. We hear these stories every single day. Many of our students have a tremendous amount of support in the home. There's as many, if not more, who don't. And you know this
I know.
because you're hearing these stories too. And the burden that some of our kids are dealing with, and then having that layer then and having to push through all of this. So we're just trying to take a hard look at this and say, how can we best support our kids? How can we be compassionate during this time? How can we engage them? Because what we're seeing for so many of our kids is they fall behind through no fault of their own many times, and then become so overwhelmed that they give up. They say, I can't, because it just seems impossible. It seems like I don't even have a fighting chance. So that's really what this conversation was about. And teachers have been passionate about the conversation, regardless of where, which side of the argument you live on. Everybody's having a really, really good conversation about this.
And when we finally do decide, if we decide to make some significant changes in our grading process, at least for the time being, will we look for consensus on this, or will we just say, well, I've listened to you, but here's the way you're going to do it anyway?
No, I'd like to believe that, consensus is what's really important. We're moving forward as a district. We're rowing in the same direction instead of beating each other with the oars. And, this is what we believe, and this is what's best for students. I
So-
think that's really important. I think that, to get back to Sue's point, student success plans and what you were saying as well have been really a mandate since 2012. And given the tumultuous nature of our district for the last many years, it's been hard to really look at that. And now with COVID, we're really starting to look at that. So that's giving our students a basis for what they really need, really looking at them individually and figuring out a plan. And I think that brings in some of the mental health issues that Sue was talking about. But I think the other, just in terms of professional practice, something that we really need to look at is consistency. Because if Ellen's taking, an English class, whether she gets this Sue or this Sue, the experience or the grading or the how she's going to be assessed should be the same. It shouldn't be, you get a one-shot deal here and okay, or maybe you get 25 shots over here. So I think we have to have some guidance of where's the consistency? What's the minimum? What's the maybe a maximum? What are we doing in terms of our delivery? And I think COVID's helped us see that it just was wonky for our kids, and it shouldn't be, okay, this teacher or that teacher, and this is the grade that you can predict, or this is what might happen because you have this opportunity or that opportunity. And that's something that the state's asking us to do as well, making sure that things are more equitable across the board. And I think, and that's through no fault of anybody either. I'm gonna say, when I taught my class, my English high school class, what did I do? I closed the door at the beginning of the lesson to show that I was starting the lesson. Exactly what Sue said. Now, what we do and how we teach is very, very public. But it's also very collaborative, and we're talking. And I think that's great. And I think the kids can win out of that. Because, it's just like the medical profession, right? They keep growing and learning. Look at all that they've had to go through in this last year. Would you go to a medical practitioner who didn't look at their practice for the last 20 or 30 or whatever years? I think this is a great opportunity. I think talking, communicating, really, looking at what we do can only make us better. Would you go to somebody who does construction the way they did 60 years ago? No, that's why we're building a new building, because we've let that lapse, right?
But the code hasn't said you can get away with shoddy work.
No, but the codes were different, or the codes didn't exist then. And that's what we found out about the high school, right? So now there's a lot of different factors, right? So certainly it warrants having a conversation.
Okay, Jess first, and then we'll open it up to the gallery.
Two things that I think are maybe kind of the biggest issues, especially at secondary level. The issue of low grades. So as a parent, my child gets a low grade. That's a problem. Like, I don't want my child to get a low grade, but I think we have to be careful not to view the grade itself as the problem, but the grade is a sign of a problem. So what is the problem? The problem is not the fact that she got a 20. The problem is, did she not understand the material? Did she not pass it in? Did she, whatever? What is the problem? What is the reason for that? And I know that there's probably a temptation to, because she'd feel better about herself if you gave her a 50 instead of a 20, but that does nothing to address the problem. So I hope that we can focus on that and think about that, and that any attempt, and I understand the desire to be flexible and compassionate and all of that, and but the more that we allow things to slide, the more that we allow a bar to be lowered, the fewer tools we have to actually find out what is actually going on with these kids. Do they not understand it? Are they not capable of understanding it? Do they completely understand it? They just don't care. They're bored. They're not engaged. They're not doing it. Is there trauma at home? Are they playing Fortnite? Like, what is it? What is it? And so if the parents aren't seeing an accurate representation of the actual depth of the work that they're doing, and if the teachers feel like they need to keep giving chances and chances and chances to get that grade up or whatever it is, I don't know, like, Like I said, as a parent, I don't want my child to fail a class. But I would rather know that I actually know what's going on.
You also don't
Versus
want your
just-
kid to leave that class without learning what she was supposed to.
Right, right. And I think that it's the failing, to me, the failing a class is not the worst thing that can happen. The worst thing that can happen is them not learning the material or them skating through and there really is something else that's going on and we don't catch it because we're not looking closely enough, because we're just concerned about making sure that kids get through and everybody feels good about themselves. And I don't mean it to sound like condescending at all, but I that's the temptation. Like that's the temptation that I have for my own child, is to let things slide sometimes because I know it sucks. Like I get it, but that doesn't help.
Okay.
The other thing
Go ahead.
is the idea of deadlines. And that's something that I know that there's been more flexibility with. And, you know, you guys said like we struggle as adults, which is accurate, but we still have jobs. You guys still have deadlines. I still have deadlines. My bills still have to be paid. I mean, there's still deadlines that exist even when we're struggling. And so I think that part of helping kids to learn grit and to learn to deal with difficult situations is making them still hold to things. And maybe not as many things. I mean, maybe different, you know, maybe there's in individual situations, there are certain tweaks that need to be made. But generally speaking, I don't think we help people by just letting things slide. And as far as grades go, if they can just make stuff up at any point during the quarter, there's no guarantee that they're going to even know how to do it by the time they get to the end of the quarter. If it's a topic that's cumulative, it's a math or a science. So they get to the end of the quarter, they can make those assignments up. They may not understand them, and now it's too late to learn it. Whereas if they're returning things in on a regular basis, getting the grade is their feedback to whether or not they're understanding the concept, then they know, I don't understand this. I need to get a handle on this before we go any further. So those are, I mean, and human nature is always going to be to push the limits. And so you will have some people that will still do their work in a timely manner, but you probably are going to have more of them that won't, and they're kids. And you just get to this cumulative point where they're being disadvantaged, not only by the situation that we all find ourselves in, but also by the way that maybe we are interacting with them. So I would just continue to push for high standards and yes, understanding, but I think there's too many things that are going to fall through the cracks if we don't have that.
Okay, I promised I'd go to Cyberland. Anyone out there on Zoom on the camera? Then we'll get to the people who aren't on camera. Anyone? Lots of administrators out there. You must have something you want to say. I see a couple teachers out there or people with very recent teaching experience. You must have something to say. Oh, but we're taking no chances. Sue on the telephone. Anything?
I don't, because I don't know anything about what you're talking about.
Okay.
I don't know what
Ellen.
the premise is behind it. So John, can I finish?
Well, no, I thought
Please.
you were. You just said you didn't know.
Well,
what we
no,
were
I
talking
don't know, but to finish my point, I wish I had known in advance what we were talking about because it's taking up a majority of the meeting and I have no idea. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Can I say something quick?
I'll give you another couple minutes, but you've already taken a long
I know,
time.
but
Mr.
it's not
Yocum.
necessary.
But
I
you've been
agree
good,
wholeheartedly
so-
with you. Just one thing, I think failure is necessary, just to add on to it. You have to fail. Mr. Marchand's out there, I can tell you as a coach, what a great coach he was. The only thing that turned him into a great swimmer and my kids and the kids that swim for him is failure and his discipline and its rigor. And we're building a new school, new high school. And given COVID's, problems with COVID, we need to get these kids up through social work, through all those other assisting sides, separate the compassion from the grades, and yet give them the rigor and give them the discipline so that when we fill this high school up with all these new kids, we live up to our standards as being a magnet for other towns, because we don't, not just Torrington, it's lots of places, but I think it's our obligation to make sure we don't give on the rigor side and the discipline side and the grading side. You got $2.9 million. Let's give on the assistant side and extra tutoring and extra all those stuff. But don't tell a parent and a child that you're doing fine. You're passing when you're really not passing, because the parents never really know. And parents always want to think their kids are doing great, even if they're not doing great. Like you said, you don't want a child to fail. you know, some of my kids failed miserably and some didn't, but, you know, they'll figure it out. And, you know, at 18 years old, when the kid graduates next year, he might be going to the military. We need to prepare these kids for life. And life's not that far off for any of those kids. Whether you're a freshman or a junior, a year from now, he could be, you know, in India on the boundary line between China and India. Whereas I know somebody leaving tomorrow, for Iraq again. So, and he's 19 years old, you know. So anyway, I'm concurring, but at the same time, I understand, you know, what you're going through.
Thank you. Sue and Sue, anything to respond to what you've been hearing?
No, I just think that, you know, compassion is not giving the grades away or saying that kids don't have to do the work. Certainly, I mean, in what I described at the very beginning, my expectation is that students will learn. We need them to learn. They need to learn so that they have those skills as they go out into the world. Absolutely. But we have to really figure out, especially, and teachers are grappling with this every day. They are working so hard. And we're having those meaningful discussions about this. How do we reach those kids? How do we help them be successful? Because that is our job. Yes, it's the student's job to, you know, work hard and show up and participate and engage. But it's also our job to figure out, especially in crazy times like this, how can we best address those issues so that, I mean, you're constantly thinking about new strategies, new ways, new modalities, new creative ways of either presenting, so that students really do get jazzed. You're hoping, you're looking to ignite that fire always.
One teacher had said to me, very good teacher, many years experience in Torrington, just recently after all this came out, he said, I don't understand why the administration doesn't realize that I, the teacher, know if this child is ready to pass on, or I know as a great teacher, I can evaluate, did this kid work hard? Did he try? And if he's still failing, I'm going to give him what's needed, that little boost to get him over. But if the child didn't try, never showed up, didn't pass any tests, and just didn't care, inside morally, I cannot give that child a passing grade. So he said, I feel like it's been taken out of my hands. And I, the teacher, am the one who most understands whether or not that child is ready to move on or not. So that's
Yeah.
and it fits
And I
in.
don't
know
think
it fits in.
anybody's disputing that
Right.
at
So
all.
as long as that continues.
Right,
as long
you
as
have
they
to
continue
remember,
with that.
anything from a 0 to 64 is a failure.
Right. But he said, but
I'm just saying,
correct.
right? So,
But the teacher knows, I mean, if he's got a 64, but this kid tried hard, a good teacher's gonna say, you know, you made it. That was the point.
or they're gonna give you another assignment and
Or
say,
give
do
another-
that
exactly.
one more.
Right. Exactly.
Whatever, but I
Right.
think it's worth having that discussion
Yes.
about,
Yes.
Right, or give you an opportunity to demonstrate what you've learned and what you know, maybe in a way that is more in line with your learning style. And this is a conversation for another day,
Right.
but
right.
you know, it's all about mastery-based learning too, you know? And Well,
Okay, I
no.
think we've
Stop,
probably
hold on.
gone about as far as we promised. This the last
Give me
thing
the
you're gonna
hairy
say,
eyeball,
right?
mister.
Go ahead.
Why did I come out on this cold night to have this interesting conversations, right? No, I just got to thinking, as far as like you talked about the grading committee and looking at barriers to student success and what is the rest of the state doing. And it's the barriers to student success that kind of trips me up a bit, because I don't think grades are a barrier to student success. I think that, you know, if you, like I said, if you're getting a bad grade, there's something that is a barrier,
correct.
but it's not the grade itself. So that just kind of made me wonder, like, do you have at like the social workers you said that are doing all, do you have social workers on the grading committee? Are those people, like, if you have a student at the secondary level that's not engaging, that's not coming to class, I mean, obviously the teacher can only do so much.
Right.
Wait,
Are
there are
does that
social
get-
workers on the grading committee?
Yeah.
Do social workers give grades?
No, but they're
Okay.
a member of the faculty.
No, that's, I just wanted to make sure that I heard what I thought I heard. Go ahead, keep going, Joe.
Right, so I'm just wondering how much of the responsibility, if a student is not engaging, is not coming to class, is not, because if a kid's getting all zeros, they're not passing stuff in. It's not that they're not understanding. it,
Correct.
They're not doing the work.
Correct.
And so how much of that, you know, whereas a student might not respond to teachers repeatedly emailing or calling,
Yeah.
but the family might respond if a social worker reaches out to
Which is
them.
exactly what's happening.
And so that's good. So there's a
Yeah.
point where that gets passed off to
Yes.
the social
Yeah,
worker.
and the social worker takes it on because the teacher, as I'm sure you know, can't do anymore, right? And so the social worker takes it on, makes the phone calls, does the outreach, goes to the home, and tries to re-engage the student. And that's really how this got started.
I mean, that to me doesn't
Doesn't
have
give-
anything to do with grading.
Who else
But-
that doesn't give grades is on the grading committee?
There are also some administrators on the committee.
Some administrators on there, okay. Did these people
Admins,
ever, I mean, how many of
teachers.
them have very recent teaching experience?
I do. It's Hillary. Sorry, I raised my hand earlier.
Most everyone except the social worker.
Okay.
We just
thank
have
you. I'm
one.
sorry, Jess, I'm still trying to process.
No,
social
that was
workers
just
on
because
the
I was just
committee.
like starting to think of, logistically, how does this all work? And obviously, if you have a kid that's not showing up to any of their classes,
Right.
that really doesn't have anything to do with their, math teacher or their science teacher. That has to do with something totally different.
Yeah.
And that would be like a social worker.
Right.
Is
If
she
I
not-
can share one little thing, if I'm
Please.
able to.
It's
I
Ron.
just wanted to bring a perspective of
No, Hillary.
students who are struggling. And I'm sorry, I can't show my face at the moment, but students who are struggling, when they see the zeros, they shut down. So it's something that we continue to work with the social workers, our counselors, ourselves as administrators, and our full teams with our teachers. They just see the zero and they have a really hard time getting past it, or so many zeros, or have failed a marking period and are working to move forward. Just a reminder that if 50 isn't passing, it's still failing, but there is a recovery piece that can happen as a result of it. Just wanted to bring that forward with some knowledge, just so people are thinking about a 20 versus a 50. I mean, if you look at what passing is at a 65, a 0 is way less points than 5 more points to move to a 70. So it's just something to consider, and giving a little bit of that hope, maybe something to also think about. When kids are looking at zeros, it's not motivating them to do better, it's shutting them down further. And that's what we are battling with right at the moment with engagement. And we are trying to support with our social emotional aspects. So I just kind of wanted to make sure that point kind of got brought forward.
Anyone else?
Something about grading and teaching during COVID? Would that be okay? I think grading now is just entirely different than grading was in the past. And I do think a grading committee needs to meet, because I do think there's some policy and some things that we can do so we're consistent across the board. So it's not just one teacher alone in a room, but things that can still allow a teacher to be their professional. They're in charge of their grades, but having some policies is great. But during COVID, I don't think you can have the exact, and I'm not saying that you can't have rigor, and I'm not saying that you can't have high expectations, but you have got to change the grading. It is entirely different world out there than it has ever been before in the classroom. And if I have those same expectations that I had, almost every student would fail. And it's not because they're not trying, and it's not because the work isn't rigorous. It's just different. It is entirely different. And we can't. Almost every kid would have a 0 rate now, between the technology, between their demands, between their mental health. Just, there's way too many issues for us to not change during COVID. We just have to. It has to be different. I do think having this grading discussion in the committee and having some policies that will help teachers with the collaboration and consistency after COVID is essential. But during this time, we have to take late work. We have to modify and differentiate for every single kid. We have to do everything we can to get them the skills they need in the foundation to do better when this is finally over, and we want to get them back to normal. And I just needed to say that. I see them struggling every day. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm ready to move on unless there's some great uproar about doing that. Robin, you had your hand up? No?
Fiona does.
Fiona has her hand up.
Oh, Fiona, go ahead.
Can you hear me now? Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so just a couple of things. I think this is about a lot more than grading. I think that these discussions probably should have been occurring over the last 10 years. I do want to say for the record that no one is saying people should be changing grades under no circumstance. The kids have to understand the material, they have to understand the content to move on. But we all have responsibility for where we are as a district. We're an alliance district, okay? So somehow, somewhere, that gap is not being met. And that doesn't mean that we give kids grades that they didn't earn. It means that we need to start having the discussions about where does that hole appear? Is it because if you're in this class, you have one assignment for the semester? That's your grade. If you're in this other class over here, you have 20 assignments for the semester. So yes, depending on what class you get is going to determine your outcome. Is it because of the home life that the child has? There's a lot of reasons, but we have to start figuring out what they all are. And that does not mean giving grades to kids that they haven't earned. It means figuring out how do we reach this 35% of our kids that are being left behind. And it's everyone's responsibility. So I hope that the majority of the staff participates in these conversations so we can get to the bottom of what is the root of these problems. And it's not going to be the same for every kid. So I would encourage everyone to have their voice in this so we can figure out a way to reach them. You know, we had an example the other day of, you know, somebody being angry because one of the kids wasn't turning his screen on. And then lo and behold, it was a matter of he wasn't turning his screen on because he was embarrassed of where he lived. And there was a simple solution to that, but we have to be willing to figure out what the barrier is and how do we resolve it. And that's all of us. It's the teachers, it's the Board of Ed, it's the administration, the families, and the students. So I want to be clear. I'm hoping that this is a growing point for all of us as far as how do we address some of these bigger issues. And that does not mean providing kids with grades they don't deserve or making things easier. It's getting to the place that we need to be and hopefully moving us out of an alliance status. So yes, we have to have these tough discussions. And I think what you're saying is February 16th, the professional development will be an opportunity for all the staff to weigh in on these kind of things. And I hope they do, because this shouldn't be a small group of people. This should be representation of all of our faculty. That's it.
And the professional development.
Okay, now, but we did hear, you talked about teachers not giving kids grades they hadn't earned, but we did just hear that you can do no work and get a 50. So isn't that the same thing?
Who said that?
Well, we
Nobody
just
was
heard
saying
that. Yes, we did. Hillary just said it.
No, I didn't say that that you would just get a 50 for doing
Okay,
no.
and what did you say, please?
So what I was trying to explain is that a 50 is still failing, and that when you look at what a passing score is, a 65, or, you know, well, yeah, 65. Between 65 and 50 is a, you know, to go down to a 20, that's a lot of different points there. It's just a consideration to think about.
But if a kid gets a 20, you can't show that on the grade, right?
I'm not saying you can't.
Philosophically.
It's just something to consider.
Okay, now I thought you couldn't get a grade lower than a 50 in the first trimester at the middle school.
The grading policy of the Board of Education says that grades have to be changed to a 50 for the first trimester.
Okay, so a kid then is assigned a grade that he or she may not have earned.
I believe in the effort to give them the chance to recover.
Okay, all I wanted was a yes or a no. Thank you. Gary?
Failing.
just real quick, I think, to Veronica and Hillary, there are a lot of teachers that don't agree with you. I'm not saying you're right or wrong. I'm not, and it's been a hard time, but there are a lot of teachers who do not agree with you. And maybe that's something that needs to be addressed as well. And I'm talking teachers on every level. I got cornered by she just retired last year, the year before, on the way out, explaining to me the importance of all these things. And she's been substituting somewhere, but she understands what's going on. But not completely, but there are a lot of teachers who just don't agree with you. And it needs to be addressed, because I don't think it helps if some teachers, some administrators, some teachers think it should be one way, and yet you have another half your staff who thinks, I want to teach the way I've always taught and bring my students up to a level I think they're capable of, and not sugarcoat it, and prepare these kids for life. And I've got family members. My nephew quit school at 9th grade. He was 17 years old. And I've got plenty of family members who've not succeeded in high school, but have made a success of themselves because they understand what failure is, and they understand the consequences of failure. I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a sociologist, I'm not an educator, but there are a lot of teachers who agree with just the opposite. And I think that's been brewing for a long time as well. And maybe that address is taken, maybe without names, because a lot of teachers are worried to express their opinion. There might be some retribution, blah, blah, blah. That's the way it goes in the teaching business, I'm sure. Let's just be, if we're going to have our opinions out there, let every teacher express their opinion, and let them participate. So you understand that there are lots of people out there in our school district that disagree.
And they'll
probably-
have that great opportunity
Yeah, I
on the
wasn't even aware
PD
of that.
day. Yeah, so that
But
will
they have
help.
to be
And-
encouraged to not be
Right,
afraid.
and that's a part of the process.
Yeah.
So we're moving along in the process.
addressing it.
We're addressing it on the 16th.
Gotcha.
And we can keep you apprised of
Yeah.
what's going on. Hopefully, instead of, having outside of school conversations, they'll voice what their concerns are inside, because that's the productive way to have your voice heard.
In fact, the only productive way to
Right.
have your
Right.
voice heard.
Thank
I would
you.
encourage people to do that or
I
shut
do it
up,
all the time.
one or the
I
other.
do it all the time.
Anyway,
Nobody shows up.
Gary, I'm turning it to you, I think, in this meeting. Okay, next, distinguished alumnus, nomination process, medium for presentation, etc.
Right, so you have a two-sided document. It's the form that we use, it's the form we use every year, but it's the one from last year. I've highlighted, I gave it to him, yeah. I highlighted the sections that we need to update. If, when you decide what you think the timeline should be. And then John, you had said, and I agree, we have to talk about what the format would be for this, right? Because last year we decided to forego it, and who knows where we're going to be this year. We still have the nominations that we had received last year in a file.
And we can look at those next. What's the deadline for this year? Did you put a deadline?
Well, we
on
don't
it?
have one. I was waiting for
Okay.
the committee to talk about that. Last year it was
But it says-
mid-March.
Yeah,
It says March 15th.
but that was last.
But this
year.
was
Last year.
2020, so
That was so we could make the decision at the April school improvement meeting, right?
Yeah.
And have time to run them off and process them and look at them and think
right,
about
and
them.
then notify the
Right.
recipient, right?
Right.
So that, because it's a requirement that they attend this June event.
Although, how did we do scholarship night last year?
It was virtual.
Which I'm kind of assuming is gonna probably be the same thing this year. I mean,
Probably.
Probably.
It went very well, though,
Mhm.
virtually, and we were able to acknowledge all of the students. High school did a great job. So we could patch somebody in virtually. I'm sure Ally could help us. Yes,
Well,
so
I
that
don't-
the speaker
yeah.
can still speak.
I mean, I don't think we could possibly even expect somebody to travel right now.
Right.
Because of all the travel
Sure.
restrictions and all that too. So with that, we may have more time to play with, because that's part of the thing. If we select somebody from out of state, we have to find out if they can do that, and that takes longer, So I would say I mean, I don't know if we even need to review them until April, I would think, because we could make a choice.
Okay, what would
Notify.
be the advantage to going longer on it? No, I mean, you're saying we would make the decision in April. We don't need to make it before,
I
right?
don't think we need to make it.
No, no.
Yeah.
So we can keep this mid-March deadline for applications or nominations.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're at the 3rd now.
Helen,
It could still be virtual if it was in person and just have the nominee be virtual.
Well, and that's what and so they have to be available on that day, but they don't have
Right.
to be available to travel to be here in
Right.
person.
Right.
on that
Right.
day. Yeah, because
And I think in the past, someone who was picked couldn't make it, so declined.
Yeah.
So I think having a virtual might be
Right.
the best.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking if we needed more time with the process, I think that gives us some more flexibility.
Sure.
Maybe we don't, but I think part of the issue we had run into in the past too was budget meetings and our agenda getting pushed off in one of those months at some
could
point
happen this year
That's true,
too.
too. So, I mean, I don't know.
Right, so I'm just looking at the calendar. The April School Improvement Committee meeting will be April 7th. That's the first Wednesday in April.
Right, and by then, we have to have the budget to the city by the 15th, so we should be pretty
If
ready.
necessary, you could move the school improvement meeting for a couple of weeks anyway,
Okay.
if it gets to
Till
be a
later,
real
yeah.
problem with scheduling special
Okay.
meetings or whatever, because again, to your point, Jess, if it's virtual, then it's a little easier to schedule. And I think most of the people who would be eligible or nominated for this are probably familiar with Zoom by now or some
Mhm.
other.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, everybody is.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah, we've lived it too long here.
Well, yeah, so if our April meeting got bumped,
Right, if
we
it got
could make
bumped.
we could make the decision in May and still have enough time because the awards night, you'd have at least a month for awards night.
Right, so
I don't know what the date is this year, but it's usually like.
it's usually the
The
first
first week.
Thursday, so it looks like probably June 3rd.
Mhm.
Yeah, they may know. Is Robin still?
Yeah, I
No.
don't see Robin.
Does Andrew know?
Or Leanne might know too. Andrew or Leanne, do you know when the scholarship night is? Scheduled? Is it June 3rd? Do you
Oh,
know,
Robin.
Robin?
Yeah, I don't think we have a date yet. I can find out for you.
Are you gonna leave it probably traditionally, it's that first week in June, that last Thursday in May kind of thing? So,
Yes.
okay,
So then the forms completed and submitted to superintendent's office by like the 1st of April?
Would that give you time to compile everything, make copies for this meeting and so on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's up to you on that. I mean, as far as the day, if that's okay with you, then that's good.
I think that's good. And even if we don't, like, we could get our documents given to us. Like, because I'm sure we'll be like seeing each other
yeah,
at that time frame,
Sure.
you know, and not necessarily have to receive them at SICK. Like, we could receive them at some point once
Sure.
they're assembled. and
Yeah,
then
we'll have enough
we'll have more
opportunity
time.
to, yeah.
I feel like we'll be spending lots of time together.
Yep.
Okay, so date is April 1st. Format and medium for the presentation still, we expect to tie it to one of the high school events.
Excuse me. Sorry to interrupt, but Charlie just let me know that it is on the calendar for June 3rd.
3rd, that's what I thought.
I was just
Great.
looking for it.
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, okay.
Thank you.
So that's good. So then tomorrow, then I can just make these edits and get this sent out to, you know, the typical, get it in the paper and we send it out to all Torrington Public Schools and start to collect nominations.
One thing I just thought of with the time frame is the plaque.
Yep.
And how long that takes to get made.
Mhm.
So if we,
That wouldn't be presented if the event is virtual anyway, necessarily on that night.
Right. I mean, what some
Yeah,
people have
yeah.
done with virtual award ceremonies is they send the plaque to the person.
Oh, in advance.
Yeah.
So that on the
Oh, so
Zoom,
they have
they're
it.
like, you know, like,
Okay.
so I don't know how long it takes to get a plaque made. So that's just another variable
Yep.
that came to mind.
Yeah. Actually, Lisa Soliani had something made for us different than a distinguished alum last year, and through her contacts, it didn't take long at all. It was
Same week.
a week.
It's really
Yeah,
great.
yeah. So
And I suppose we could deal with the people who make those plaques and just say, okay, here's everything you need except the name. We'll let you know
That's
when we
true.
have the name.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's smart.
That might speed things up if it looks like we're going to be tight, but it doesn't sound like we're going to be tight. And if we have between mid-April and early June, because we'll choose somebody, if we get bumped mid-April, we'll choose someone in April, confirm with them that they will participate, and at that point, it becomes a mechanical process of just taking steps. Okay. Thank you, Sue, for taking care of all of that. Okay, the next set of agenda item topics, website, we have Altice and social media updates and so on and so on and so on.
right, so you have a little update on the social media. Ally, do you have any updates on Altice or anything to share?
I do. Altice, I guess with the weather running a little bit behind schedule, we have 21 finished installations. We have a total of 243 that are outstanding at this point. Some of them may be on hold because some families were unsure whether or not that was the right person, because Altice has been using subcontractors. And it doesn't bear the Altice logo, so we have to reach back out to these families saying, yes, this is indeed, what you signed up for with us. But then we have currently installation scheduled until the end of the month. And that's all I got on Altice.
Thank you. And the fiber optic people are going around town. They were on Red Mountain Avenue yesterday and today, so
That's
that's
a beautiful
long
thing.
range, it has nothing to do with us now, but at some
So
point.
Altice, you have two providers in town. You have Frontier. I'm sorry for people that have them, which relies on old copper technology. They picked up on old AT&T wire, and there is no fiber optics. And then you have Altice, the old Cablevision, which is for the most part still using copper wire. And depending on the age of the wire, we have families, we ask them, we get families, they get like maybe 3 kids at home, and they're getting online and saying, oh my goodness, everybody at home, we're dying over here with not having enough bandwidth. Is there anything we can do? And there's nothing we can do, only because the infrastructure that's in place of Altice is just so old, because it's still copper lines and there's loss of signal and all these things. So the speeds that they're getting is just horrendous. We've even had teachers here in Torrington come to their building at the schools because we have much faster internet than they do. But so what the fiber does is, fiber has virtually no loss of signal. You can go miles and miles without any loss of signal. So Altice does now bring fiber to the home. Everything's completely digital, and the speed is going to be phenomenal. The biggest difference is going to be that the download speed and the upload speed of fiber are identical. So that if you're sharing a video or you're uploading schoolwork or you're uploading a video, it's going to be just as fast as downloading something. And that's going to be a major breakthrough for our families here.
And some of us won't be around when that finally comes in. but- No,
You'll
it'll be
in Florida?
alive,
You're gonna be in
right?
Florida?
No,
Is that what you're saying?
Never go to Florida too
I'm
hot.
just kidding.
I like this.
Yeah.
Anything else on this agenda line?
There you have it here in front of you. The only other comment, which is kind of happy news, is that we've had quite a bit of activity
over the snow days with people posting comments about, thank you so much for a good old fashioned snow day.
Good. That was
Yep.
the right move on that. That's good.
You know, it would be cute, and it's probably too late to do it now, although you maybe still could, is do like a hashtag TPS snow day and have people post pictures of their kids playing in the snow.
that
and then
would
we
be
could
cute.
share them.
There will
Well,
be
maybe
others.
Monday.
That would be
That's a
cute.
good.
I'll do videos.
No, maybe.
Bite your tongue.
Oh, I heard it's missing us, but who knows?
If you go on the school, if you go on the school Facebook pages, a lot of these schools did exactly that. Asked the parents to post pictures of what kids were doing in the snow. And there was a lot of fun ones. Even teachers were getting involved, jumping in the snow.
So the
Individual
district
schools.
could take that material
Yeah.
and
Do a
share it
collage.
district-wide.
Yeah.
That's what some of our.
Keep that material
every
going.
We have social media people in every single building, and they did just what you're saying, send a request, hey, send us some things, and then some of them were reposted on different building Facebook pages.
Yeah, why not? Sounds good. Good idea. Good idea. Next, tag update. Sue, Laura, anyone?
Laura is, I think, Laura, you out there? There you are.
Yep,
so we have been working on this a little bit, not as much as we would like to, but now's kind of a difficult time to be doing this new reform kind of thing. I did speak about beginning the process and really looking at potentially evaluating students that were referred. So we do have a referral form that parents can fill out if they feel that their child may be able to meet this criteria, and in which case we would then begin the evaluation process for them. So as I explained last time, the long goal, hopefully maybe even for next year, would be for us to be able to do a district-wide IQ measure. But since we don't have that as just like the OLSAT or something that's just given to all children, we would need to do an individual IQ. Excuse me, Curtis. So that's, we right now we're just going to wait and see if any referrals come in that, we would do the individual assessment, and this would be the starting point with that. It's not yet posted on the website, but I guess that would probably be our next point. The principals do have it. So if there are questions about possibly testing to see if a child is gifted, we could give them this. I just think it's very important that we continue to explain that right now, Torrington is not offering gifted services. So yes, we need to identify, however, we're not providing the services. So, I don't know exactly how many referrals we'll get, but I feel like it's important that the process has been started. When I spoke last time about TAG, one of the things that we spoke about was really that whole differentiated piece. And I talked about it not being on the side that I'm normally involved with, but on the other side. And after that meeting, I was actually contacted. There was an article in the paper, and then I was contacted by Dr. Susan Carroll. And I think some of you may know who she is. She was very helpful. She was very knowledgeable about Torrington, and she was able to tell me about a program which had been started, which I wasn't aware of, and that's Project Lift. And it is a UConn project. It is a research project, I guess, that the graduate students were working on. And the professor is Dr. Catherine Little. So I guess about 3 years ago, correct, Andrew? 3 years ago, Vogel began. And so what happened was one group of first grade teachers were kind of the pilot, and they were given professional development and whatnot with the focus, sorry, my phone, with the focus being helping teachers really develop skills to recognize high potential in the primary grades, and also to help teachers develop critical and creative thinking skills in their students' development and also learn lesson clusters that support discourse and critical and creative thinking. So it's kind of like your differentiation on the other end and providing for our high achievers. So that began 3 years ago in Vogel. Unfortunately, last year, because of COVID, everything got put on hold. But we had Vogel to the point where they this year should have been their 3rd year, correct, Andrew? And Torrington, this would have been their 2nd year. However, everything was put on hold. My hope for this is, my understanding is that after you've completed the 3-year process, the teachers then have access to all of the project resources. And you've heard me say this before, I'm a very big train the trainer believer. And what I would love to see happen is that we have our cohorts that receive this training really work with all of our teachers about strengthening our tier 1 and providing that differentiated, like, upper level piece. So Andrew was kind enough to reach out to this Dr. Catherine Little, and we're trying to see at this point where we are with this project. I'm hoping we can pick this up and keep going with this. And I'm kind of going along with that. Also on February 16th, the Special Ed Leadership Department put together, it's about maybe a 75-minute webinar on differentiated instruction and where there's the difference between that and the need for a 504 plan, which is regular ed, and the need for a referral to special ed. So we just have a, in addition to everything they're doing on the grading piece, that's going to be a webinar that they'll be able to watch at when they have time during that day. So that's where we are moving forward. I don't know if you have any other questions about TAG at this point.
Questions, anyone? Gary? Nothing?
No, I'm hoping that it continues to move forward. Thank you. I mean, I think it's important.
It's very important. Yeah, thank you, Laura, for this report. Can we get that application sent to us via email?
Sure. It's
The form, yeah,
sure.
the form.
So do you want me to do that, Sue?
We can tell
Marissa should have it, right? Because it was up on the screen.
I will send-
Ally can send
Okay,
it.
thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, Ally's going to do that. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else tag related? No one else? Okay, Alliance news.
We will be pulling together our mid-year report and meeting end of next month with our rep. So we will have some data coming from our STAR results, so that would be helpful, which we put in the report, but we can also share with the subcommittee.
Thank you.
Just give an update.
Thank you. Comments for the good of the order. I'm going to go around the table, then jump to the screen, then end up at the table. Jess?
I don't have anything other than to say good meeting. Thanks for the continued conversation.
Thank you. Sue?
I was going to say the very same thing. Thank you for a productive conversation.
Yes.
Sue?
As always, John, thank you very much. Very efficient, effective, productive meeting.
People are all too kind. Okay, jumping now to the screen. Ronnie, you're up. Thank you for being here. And what do you have to say?
Say thank you for listening, and it's
Ronnie?
always good to have a discussion about students and grading and teaching. I love it, so thank you.
Okay. Laura, you're next on my screen.
Sure. So I just wanted to say thanks for recognizing how hard all of our staff work out there every day. This isn't an easy time. And on multiple occasions, I've heard the board thank all of the teachers out there and all the staff. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Leanne, you've been quiet tonight. Anything to say, please?
Hi, everyone. Just happy to be here, happy to be part of the team, keeping the dialogue open and learning from one another. So thank you.
Thank you. Fiona, you're up.
Nothing, thank you.
Andrew?
Just open the temperature goes down.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, who's next? Nikki, you're next.
I know it's the grading committee, but I'm very interested to kind of learn more about their findings on the barriers to success. Because I agree with Fiona, that's really where I think we need to be focused on, is addressing those. And I appreciate the admins that spoke up. It's always great to hear from people on the front line. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Maureen?
I want to echo what Nikki said. I really appreciated Ronnie's comments and Hillary's comments, and I want to thank Sue and Sue for taking on this topic that's controversial but needed.
Thank you. Who do we have next? Kim? Nothing.
Nope, I'm here. No, I think I share the sentiments that, I appreciate the people that spoke up, about the grading committee. I think it's important work. And I think what Fiona said is right on the money, that we have to look at all the barriers and those kinds of things. So it was good dialogue and happy to be here.
Thank you. Robin, you're next on my screen.
I'm all set, thank you.
We
She
couldn't
said-
hear
she
that.
said I'm all set.
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Andrew Marchand. Comments, go to the order.
All set, thank you. Love a good discussion. I thank the superintendent and assistant superintendent for replying and keeping us in mind. Thank you.
Brian.
Yep, I'd just like to take a minute and really thank Ronnie for being on here tonight and speaking up on behalf of her students and her colleagues. And thank you for the conversation tonight.
Thank you. Allie, you're up on my screen next.
So last year we took the award ceremonies and the scholarship night virtual for the first time. This year we're gonna plus it. We're gonna have some fun, and I'm looking forward to it. So thank you.
Okay. Marissa, you have anything to say tonight?
Sue the Prentice too is out there.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you for catching that capitalization mistake I made on the agenda, by the way.
No problem.
Hillary, you're next.
Just thank you for a good conversation, and I look forward to more and helping each other understand different perspectives.
Thank you. Sue, you're on the telephone. You're next.
I don't have anything, thank you.
Thank you. Gary.
I would just agree with Sue and Jess, and reiterate what I've said before. Open and honest discussions are appreciated, and don't take it personal. It's just, as board members, we have a different role than educators typically, and we can get through this. And as I always say, teachers are doing a great job. They're doing the best they can.
Helen.
Another great meeting. I'd like to add, thank you for throwing something my way.
Keep you busy.
Feeling lonely, not
Yeah, I think
appreciated.
aside
I
from-
was.
Aside from me, that's it. Thank you all for putting up with me tonight. It was, as far as I was concerned, I was viewing this as a dialectic approach, but I can be kind of obnoxious, might be the word, when I get this way. But I do appreciate your indulgence. Thank you very much.
I prefer curmudgeonly.
Curmudgeonly, that's, thank you. I'll take that too. Topics for future meetings. We may have generated some tonight. I still have social promotion down, but that's not for a while. Other topics for future meetings?
Oh, okay. Well,
Anything you want to talk about?
Well,
Everything.
Oh, yeah, we have these ongoing things too.
Yeah.
They will always be there, but.
well, I think we have a continuation and maybe post February 16th meeting and discussion.
No, report on, yeah, okay.
I forget what you called it, but
PD.
obviously a continuation of the grading, which will piggyback off of that. This is a crazy one, but maybe it starts from day one, but having gone back and looked at problems that are happening in the country and constitutional questions, I started actually looking at those things. civic virtue, how does that enter into our curriculum in any way? And it was something that was always a priority. I didn't even know what it was, to be perfectly honest. But it is.
Because it was just there. We didn't have to have the name
Right,
for
I
it.
mean, you would know,
Yeah, I
obviously.
know
you would
exactly
know.
what you're talking about.
So is it there? You know, should it be there? Which, in my opinion, it should be, but I'm just a board member. And how does it get there?
No one would ever accuse you
You know,
of
the
being
John F.
just a
Kennedy,
board
you know,
member.
don't ask
Yeah.
what your country can do for you. But what you can do.
Okay.
I mean, it was part of our founding fathers. I don't know, John, part of the founding fathers' philosophy. Not individual virtue, but civic virtue.
Okay, well, we'll see if we can fit
It's a
that
history on it,
in
but I don't know where it would fit.
the
It
next
does
or
it all.
some subsequent or consequent agenda. Anyone else, anything else? Cyberland, anything? Well, then I guess I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Ronnie, Sue, Kathy, anyone want to second that?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.